have a book?
You need a book? Would you?
Yeah. Now, is my microphone working?
Yeah, sounds like it. Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay. Well, I've got a really good picture here, but I think I'm the only one, so. Okay, does everyone have a book that would like one? I must precaution you on these books. If you're coming to the Wednesday night class, you'll have a book on Exodus. It looks almost identical. So if you don't read the little fine print there that tells you what book it is, you could show up with the wrong one. So just a word of caution there. All right. This is the inaugural class of the book of Genesis. And Ernest is still back there working on trying to get what I'm seeing projected up onto your videos. Suppose that I just came in all flustered and confused, and I come in and I tell you, I've got a great story to tell you, a magnificent story, but it is so big, it's so comprehensive, I just don't know where to start. What would you tell me to do? Start at the beginning. That's what we're going to do. That's the way the Bible works, and that's what we're going to do. Unlike a lot of other classes that I've taught here, we've done studies on Mark and Revelation and Romans, and each of those books we have gone through really verse by verse, expository type teaching. The book of Genesis probably doesn't lend itself to doing that, simply because it is just huge. And we would be in Genesis for a long, long time if we decided to take that tack. So we're going to have to concentrate in certain areas, like the creation part of it. The first 3 chapters, we'll give a pretty heavy dosage of that. Skip ahead to the flood, skip ahead to the Tower of Babel, skip ahead to the promise to Abraham, and so on. And so we'll kind of go in that fashion. We'll have to kind of pick and choose. All right. I'm going to work on the assumption that you're not, at least for today, you're not going to be able to see what I'm seeing, so I will try to fill you in as best I can. I have entitled this particular study, "The Book of Beginnings," and I will introduce it in that way. Well, let me ask you this: what do you already know about the Book of Genesis before we even dig in? What do you already know? Adam and Eve, yeah, first humans. Very good. Pardon?
The snake.
Oh, the snake. Yeah, the snake was there. He made an appearance. Yes, Leroy.
That the world was void, and so God said, "Let there be light."
Yeah, right at the beginning. Yes. You had.
Everything from creation to Joseph.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah, sin came into the world and started rearing its ugly head and playing a huge role. Okay. All right. In this session, all we're going to do today is get you an introduction to the book of Genesis, and it would be kind of the materials that is included on pages 4, 5, and 6. I think the these studies are usually very good, but they're kind of light on the introduction, putting the particular book that we're studying in its proper place. And so I think we need to put some effort into understanding that. I said that Genesis was the book of beginnings with an S on the end, plural beginnings. I think we're all familiar with in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, but there were a whole lot more beginnings that took place in Genesis than those. Can you identify some of those beginnings? Okay, the beginning of the family unit, the beginning of marriage. Dolores? Yeah, the beginnings of the human family. Yes. Okay, Larry?
Beginnings after the flood.
Yes, yeah, exactly. It was kind of like a second beginning. Okay, good?
Light.
Pardon?
Light.
Yeah, okay. All right. The beginning of a physical phenomena and the suitability of our planet to live on and that kind of thing. Okay. All right. Beginning of alienation from God as well. Because from the very beginning that wasn't the case, but that happened not too long into creation. And then shortly thereafter, at least the beginnings of the plan of redemption. Yeah. Even though Adam and Eve never saw it fulfilled, but it was at least the beginnings of it. Leroy?
The beginning of the first murder that took place between Cain and Abel.
Oh yeah, the first murder in the world. Okay. Beginning of what I would call rampant wickedness, the description of what was going on just before the flood, and that kind of thing. Okay.
Beginning of the Sabbath.
Okay. Yeah. It was a beginning. It was certainly God used the seventh day for a special purpose. It was the beginning of that. Okay. Lewis. Work. Yeah. Okay. Beginning of work. We found that even though the garden was a kind of an ideal place, it wouldn't be appropriate for humans not to have a purpose, not to have a function. So yeah, beginning of work. Okay. We can also see the beginning of covenants between God and humans. God made one with Noah. He made one with Abram, and repeated it on down that particular line. And it was the beginning of God's chosen family, designated a family through which He communicated His will and His word. Let's talk some about the authorship of the book of Genesis. Where did it come from? Who do we generally credit?
Moses.
Okay, Moses. Okay. There are some theories that have been developed recently that the Genesis was kind of cobbled together from a number of different sources, and Moses being one of them, but not getting the entire credit. I've never put a lot of credibility into that. The reason that I say this, I think we can pull several things out of Scripture that tell us that Moses probably did write the book of Genesis as well as the entire Pentateuch. It is said, this is in Stephen's sermon back in Acts chapter 7, Moses was raised under the influence of Pharaoh and is said to have been educated in all the wisdom of the Egyptians and was powerful in word and deed. Okay. So the first 40 years, Moses enjoyed a very privileged lifestyle. And the Egyptians were very advanced in civilization, in reading and writing, and mathematics and those kinds of things. Moses got exposed to all of those things, so it made him a very capable writer. Another thing about Moses' ability to write, go over to Exodus chapter 31 real quick. And I'd like to somebody to read verse 18 of Exodus chapter 31. Yes.
And he gave to Moses, finished speaking with him on Mount Sinai, 2 tablets of testimony, tablets of stone written with the finger of God.
Okay, this is Moses on Mount Sinai. He has gone up, left the Israelites down at the base of the mountain. he has received these 2 tablets of stone that contain what we know later as the 10 Commandments, and they are said to be written with the finger of God. Okay? Very finger of God wrote the covenant on those 2 tablets. What happened to those 2 tablets? Yeah, exactly. What were the circumstances behind it?
The Israelites were sitting
Yeah,
at the base of the mountain, and Moses came down and threw the tablets down, and they broke.
yeah, exactly. Now, the breaking of those tablets was a Moses project. God didn't tell him to break the tablets. There's nothing wrong with the tablets. What needed to be broken was that golden calf that they were worshiping. So let's read ahead to chapter 34 of Exodus, verses 27 and 28. Yes.
Then the Lord said to Moses, write these words, for according to the tenor of these words, I have made a covenant with Israel. So he was there with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights. He neither ate bread nor drank water, and he wrote on the tablet the words of the covenant, the 10 Commandments.
Okay. Now, that had kind of escaped me until I looked it up not too long ago. Think about this. The second set of tablets, who wrote it? Yeah. God told Moses, you write the commandments on these tablets. It may be God's way of saying, you broke it, now you fix it. You know, I don't know, but I'd never thought about God trusting Moses to write those commandments on the tablets, but he was able to do so. Also, Jesus himself credited Moses with the beginning of Scripture, and he said as much himself. And then Acts chapter 15, verse 1 refers to circumcision as the custom that was taught by Moses. Now, Moses wasn't around when circumcision originated in the covenant with Abram, but the writer of Acts credits Moses with teaching that custom through, no doubt, the writing of the Pentateuch. Now, there is some evidence that the book of Genesis may have undergone some very minor editing by later scribes to make it suitable for a later audience. I'll give you a couple of ideas of that. Genesis chapter 14, verse 14. If somebody could read that.
One thing real quick, though, John, if I may.
Yeah?
In Deuteronomy 34:10, it says, since then, this is after Moses had died, since then no prophet has risen in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face. Seems to me like God says he knew him face to face, he could call him up on all the details that he missed.
Sure. Okay. All right. So, chapter 14, verse 14.
14.
Mm-hmm.
I'm reading from Hebrew English version. That his nephew Lot had been taken away. 318 of Abram's servants were fighting men. So he took them and followed the enemy as far north as the city of Dan.
Okay. It seems kind of inconsequential at the moment, but they went as far as the city of Dan. And now go over to Judges chapter 18, verse 29. And somebody read that.
Verse 29.
Mm-hmm.
And they named the city of Dan after the name of Dan, their ancestor, who was born in Israel. But the name of the city was Laish at the first.
Yeah. Okay. So in Moses' time, the city was Laish. It wasn't until the times of Judges that it got renamed to Dan. But somebody, a scribe, went back to that verse in Genesis and put Dan in there instead of Laish. So minor revisions like that took place, but for the most part, let's give Moses the credit for writing it. And most people theorize that Moses wrote Genesis during the wilderness wandering, during that time period. And why not? He had a lot of time on his hands. You know, that's a long time. Okay. How would you define the word Genesis? Origin? Yeah, origin is the closest word that I think we can find. Birth is another good one. The book of Genesis relies heavily on this particular phrase. These are the generations of. And the Hebrew word for it is toledo. It gets used, by my count, about 10 times during the book of Genesis. Starts out in chapter 2, verse 4, these are the generations of the heavens and the earth. You never think about the creation itself having generations, but that's the way that Moses wrote it in the book of Genesis. Then, of course, the generations of Adam, Noah, and so on, all the way down to Jacob. In total, there are 10 different places where the book of Genesis says these are the generations of. And genealogies are extremely important as far as giving the people of Israel an understanding of where they came from and what their place is in history. There are several different ways you can outline the book of Genesis. Here's one I never thought of. Three different parts of Genesis. The first 2 chapters, generation. The next about 9 chapters going from the fall to the Tower of Babel, degeneration. And then from chapter 12 to the rest of the book, where God is working through Abram's family, regeneration. So that's a clever way of looking at it. The covenantal outline is seed, land, and blessing. Those 3 things get repeated over and over again all the way through the book as those promises get repeated. You can also look at it from a geographical standpoint. The first 11 chapters took place in what would later become Babylonia. From chapters 12 through 36, it was Canaan, the promised land. And then 37 through 50, the scene shifts to Egypt. So if you wanted to look at it from a geographical standpoint, it would have those 3 parts. Now, once the promises to Abraham get established in chapter 12, the focus of Genesis narrows significantly. For the first 11 chapters, the concern is just humanity in general. The creation, the filling of the earth, the flood, and God's dealing with the wickedness that he saw all over humanity. The Tower of Babel, so that the nations got all scattered all over the earth. But then, beginning in chapter 12, when God made the promises to Abram and made his covenant with them, the focus narrows from the rest of the world down to this particular family. And that's what it concerns itself with the rest of the book. So, I think every book has specific purposes. You know, we can generalize it and say every book is beneficial for us to understand the Word of God and so on. But most books have a really specific reason for being written, or several specific reasons. Why do you think Genesis was written? Yeah, foundation. Like, everybody's curious at some point in their life, where did all this come from? How did it all get started? And so it answers some of those kinds of questions. Formation of the world, human beings, how they came to existence. All right? Got to be some other things. Larry?
John, even with Genesis, we still hear so many different theories about where man came from.
Yeah.
Where the earth came from. Even with very clear, here's what happened, we still come up with stories. So I think God really at least wanted to put his story out there so that it's not just in silence and we have nothing else to follow.
Yeah. Before Genesis was written, people didn't just not think about it. They thought about it, and there were a lot of different creation stories. The Genesis one is not the only one that was floating around the world. The Babylonians had one, the Egyptians had one, and I want to examine one of those so you get an idea of what it was like. So God wanted to put it out and offer his story to distinguish it from from the other stories that were floating around. Okay? It was valuable for explaining to the Israelites. Now, if this came out during the times of Moses, explain to the Israelites how they ended up enslaved in Egypt in spite of being told they're God's chosen family. You know? That seems kind of ironic, and that the book of Genesis explains it all. It explains that valuable covenant between God and the Israelites, what that's all about through the lineage of Abraham. It puts forward a lot of key concepts like sin, creation, redemption, covenant. Those ideas, they all come from the book of Genesis. So these are some of the purposes for the book of Genesis being written. Okay, now I wish you could see this, but this is I want to review with you the Babylonian story of creation. It's called the Enuma Elish. Listen carefully, so you won't be able to see it, but it gives you an idea of what the Israelites were up against as far as creation stories and competing stories with their own. If you were a young Babylonian, this is the way that you would be taught. The universe began as a watery chaos with no land or sky. Now that's pretty much jives with Genesis, okay? Sounds pretty similar. Then Tiamat, who was the goddess of the sea, and Apsu, who was the god of underground water, mingled their waters together, and lesser gods were born to them. Okay? These lesser gods created too much noise, and they disturbed Apsu, the god of the underground water. So they were an annoyance. So as a result, Apsu, this god of the underground water, plotted to kill the younger gods, which enraged Tiamat, the goddess of the sea. So the two major gods are strongly at odds with each other. From those lesser gods, there was one named Marduk, who got elected to be the champion to go up against the greater gods. Tiamat, the goddess of the sea, formed an army of gods and led them into the battle against this Marduk. Marduk prevails in the battle. He cuts Tiamat in two. One half of her carcass is used to form the heavens, and the other half is used to form the earth. So,
I know, but this is, now, I'm sorry. Were the people all so dumb, they just had to, when they saw something happen, they fashioned a god for that?
I don't know if it was that simple or not, but largely yes. Yeah. The universe was made out of the carcass of this god who was killed. So, as the victorious king, Marduk created the cosmos and formed mankind for the benefit of the gods. Humans were assigned the mundane, monotonous tasks so that the gods could enjoy their leisure. Okay? Now that's the Babylonian story. Compare this story to what you know about Genesis.
All things are created for man.
Yeah. In the Babylonian story, humans are just an annoyance. They're just beings that you delegate all the work you don't want to do, and while you're off having a good time. Okay? What else do you see?
One God versus many.
Yeah. There's many gods. Each of them got some little portion of the universe that they're chief over. What else?
God is the worker.
Okay. God is the worker? Meaning,
He's not focused on leisure.
yeah.
He's focused on
Yeah.
things happening.
Yeah, exactly. The God that we know sustains the universe. He's not off enjoying his own pleasures. Okay? All right? You mentioned, Steve, that there were multiple gods. Do they get along well, apparently? No. Okay. That's one thing that Jesus made clear, that the pieces of the Godhead, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, they all have the same agenda. It wasn't God up there in heaven saying one thing and Jesus on earth saying something else. They were completely on the same page, and they worked together to accomplish their goals. Okay? Okay.
The relationship between humanity and deity. That's a big difference amongst the Babylonians.
Oh, yes. Okay. All right. The relationship between humanity and deity, how would you say that it was different?
It was loving and supportive and nurturing,
Yes.
etc. Whereas the others, like I say, they were just a nuisance. They were what grandmother used to call stepping fetches.
Okay. All right. Good. Okay. So one of the reasons for the writing of Genesis was to have an alternative to stories like these. Okay. And I think the Genesis story stands up pretty well compared to what I just read to you. Okay. Genesis is an essential part of what we know as the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible. And it's best thought of as one continuous story from creation until the Israelites were ready to enter Canaan. In fact, I am told that it was originally one book, one unbroken book. And it just got broken down into pieces later for our own convenience, so it wouldn't be so big and unwieldy. But it does flow together and is one continuous story. Genesis goes from the creation until the children of Israel moved to Egypt. Exodus talks about their delivery out of Egypt, out of their slavery, and up to the covenant at Mount Sinai. Leviticus concerns itself with just holiness, regulations, sacrifices, that kind of thing. Numbers tells the story of the Israelites as they move from Mount Sinai to Moab, and where they get into trouble with the spies, and they believe the scaredy cat spies, and so they get told they have to wait for another generation. And then Deuteronomy is talking about that second generation as the covenant passed along to them, and they were finally able to enter into the promised land. There are some scholars who say we should be talking about the Hexateuch instead of the Pentateuch. That the book of Joshua really that explains the conquest, finishes the story of the Israelites in their journey to the promised land, and I can't argue too much with that. But we tend to think of the Pentateuch simply because they have a common author. Okay, what are some of the theological themes of Genesis? What do you see emerging from the story? We've already mentioned one, that in Genesis we're talking about monotheism, one God, instead of polytheism. Okay, what else?
Well, the covenant.
Yeah, covenants.
Covenant relationship.
Yeah, and God's faithfulness to his covenants in spite of man's unfaithfulness. Okay, all right. What else?
There's a lot of sin, I guess.
Yeah.
The original sin, and then Cain killing Abel, and then you've got the reason for the flood. People just weren't doing what they should be doing.
Yeah.
People getting drunk.
Yeah. Okay. There's some flawed people in there for sure. Even the ones that God invested in greatly were kind of flawed. God's sovereignty over the creation. You know, God made it. He gets to say what happens in it, and he is in complete power, and he doesn't share it with anyone. There's a tremendous investment in human beings. You know, everything was made before humans, so they have a suitable place to live, so they could give, and everything was invested in them. As soon as the fall happened and sin entered into the world, there was a hint at a plan of redemption. Okay, just as soon as it happened. Now, it didn't get realized till a long time later. It took quite a process over centuries to get it done, but there was at least the hint of God's plan for redemption. Younger sons, in some circumstances, against the customs of the day, were preferred over younger ones, over the older ones. Can you think of some situations in Genesis where that took place?
Isaac.
Yeah. Ishmael was born first, Isaac, but Isaac was the child of promise. Hey, what else? Yeah, Jacob and Esau. Even though Esau was older by a little bit, Jacob ended up getting the promises, and the promises of God were continued through Jacob. Okay, right? And that was against the culture of the day. In Genesis, there were a lot of alienations and separations. That seems to be a pretty common theme. Can you think of some of those? I would say after the fall, Adam and Eve were driven out of the garden. They were alienated, separated from the garden. And I think they, in certain ways, became alienated from God as well. Okay? What else?
Noah being separated out and his family is
Yeah.
on the ark.
Yeah, exactly. So there was a huge separation there. Noah and his family. Yeah. God says, get up, leave this country, your nation, your people, everything you're familiar with. Go someplace. I'll show you. It's got some funny name you've never heard before. Yeah, okay.
Cain was outcast.
Yeah. Cain, as a result of murdering Abel, was marked, and he lived kind of a life of solitude because nobody wanted anything to do with him, and he was afraid of everybody else because he thought they would take revenge on him. Okay. Yes, Tanya. Yeah, Joseph. What happened to Joseph? His brothers got jealous, sold him off into slavery. They thought that was the end of him. They thought they'd never hear or see him again. Okay, that was definitely a separation. Yeah, that's a good one. The dispute between Sarah and Hagar over what status Ishmael had and what role he was to play. And they got separated out. It was kind of a sad story. But in all of that, there were some prominent reconciliations as well. Can you think of some of those, where people were separated and they found a way to get back together? Yeah, those are two really good ones. Because of Jacob and Esau, and then Joseph and his brothers. Okay, Jacob and Esau. Because of Jacob's treachery, they came to not be able to stay together in the same place, and they separated. But many years later, they found each other again. It wasn't a completely satisfactory, reconciliation, but it was a reconciliation of sorts. Okay, what about Joseph? Yeah, okay. It took many years, but as a result of another famine, the brothers of Joseph have to go to Egypt, and they don't know that they're talking to Joseph. And Joseph is throwing up all kinds of roadblocks, all kinds of difficulties for them. And he knows what's coming. And he finally reveals himself to the brothers, and they have this great, tremendous reconciliation. Okay, that's one of the great reconciliation stories in the book of Genesis. All right, I'm running blind as far as time because that clock's not working. Yeah. Okay, let's see. What am I going to... I got 10 or 12 more minutes? Okay. All right. How is Genesis getting used in the New Testament? I am told that it is alluded to at least 100 times in the New Testament. Okay, Leroy?
The one is John chapter 1 when it says, in the beginning God created.
Yeah. John's gospel starts pretty much the same way that the Genesis starts. And so I think John probably used that as kind of an outline, as if it worked for Genesis, it will work for my gospel as well. And okay, good. A lot of mention of Abraham, and his model as being justified by faith, and that's spoken of a lot in Romans. Okay, yes.
10 Commandments going over when Jesus taught.
Yeah. There was a lot of quotation of the 10 Commandments, like the rich young ruler that came to Jesus, and Jesus gave him about 4 or 5 of those 10 Commandments. Okay, good.
I think it's John 9, Jesus said, before Abraham was born, I am.
Yeah, yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. All right. And that got him into some trouble as well. Okay. Adam is spoken of as a type of Christ. In other words, Adam was the first human, and Jesus was the first God human. Adam's fall resulted in condemnation for the rest of the world. Jesus' righteousness brought salvation to the rest of the world. That's essentially how Adam is compared to Christ. Moses is listed as a type of Christ. In what ways were they similar? Yeah. Moses was a lawgiver. Jesus as well, a New Testament. They were both prophets. In fact, Deuteronomy says that there would be a prophet like unto Moses who would come along, and of course that's talking about Jesus Christ. The flood is listed as a type of what? Judgment? Yeah. What else? Baptism. Okay. Very good. It's talked about in 1 Peter as the people in the days of the flood, Noah and his family being saved through water, and in the same way that represents baptism. Also, Romans talks about the former people were there for our learning, and we can certainly study their personalities and some of the things they got themselves into, and we can certainly learn from that. The book of Genesis has its share of controversies as well. What are some of the controversies that are either in the book of Genesis or that swirl about the book of Genesis?
The timing is one that I keep hearing on the radio all the time. It's like, was it done in 6,000 years or did it evolve over time?
Yeah.
And my take on that is I'm not going to waste any time on it, frankly. God, 1,000 years is a day, vice versa. Time
Yeah.
isn't limited. He's not limited. That's a serious argument.
Yep.
Where it's
Yes.
not really firmly, hey, 6,000 years,
Yep.
that's it.
Yeah, exactly. So the age of the earth is one of those controversies. Okay, what else? Just like the Babylonians had their own creation story, I think scientists have a creation story, which is what? The Big Bang. Yeah, the Big Bang. And we're going to, when we get past the 6 days of creation, we'll talk some about what that theory is and how it fits in with Scripture or how it clashes. All right? What else?
The fight that's still going on today with children of Israel and Ishmael.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. It still plays a huge role in the world stage today. And it's always been the kind of thing that could draw the rest of the world into conflict. And so, yeah, that's a big deal. It's a big deal. Okay, Mark?
The flood.
Yeah, the flood? Mm-hmm. We'll talk some about the flood, but in every major culture there is some kind of a legend or a story about a huge flood that covered the earth. It seems to be common to virtually all cultures, even the ones that didn't live next to each other, and probably didn't have a lot to do with each other. Okay. What about the theory of evolution? Okay. How did the species get made? How did they progress and that kind of thing? And we're going to talk some about that. I think some of those ideas we need to understand what they are and be conversant with them. Yes.
Can I say something?
Yeah, you can say something.
Slept on my brother-in-law a long time ago. He said he knows there's a lot of in-laws and outlaws in our
Okay.
family.
All right.
But he said, how come they had to have them all in our family? It's kind of funny, I thought, but you have to know them.
Okay. All right.
But anyway, he said that's just too much.
Yeah. You go shake the branches on the family tree. There's no telling what falls down. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. The theory of evolution, the Bible talks about the species reproducing after their kind, and evolution has depending on how you define after their kind, it has a different idea of how things evolve. Okay. Did I miss somebody's hand? I guess not.
A peach tree brings peaches. An apple tree brings apples. Now, where do they get all that other?
Well, we'll talk some about that. That's okay. We'll get to it.
I think I'm going to come in and sit somewhere else besides here.
All right. Those are all the introductory things. So I hope you've got a fair idea of where Genesis fits into all of this. You got the big picture. Next week, we will get into the text itself. So, in your books, we will be studying lesson 1, I believe. Yeah, starting on page 7, God creates all things. We'll go through and talk about the days of creation, what happened and maybe why it happened, and go from there. I think we are just about out of time. Am I correct? All right. Okay. We won't start anything new today. We'll just call that good. And I appreciate your patience and